Hello YouTube, thought I'd do a quick video here. First off, I want to apologize. This is not going to be a GMRS video per se, but this video may help you troubleshoot the sound on your GMRS 2A radio setup. I've had some emails, people asking me, we don't have an oscilloscope. How can we see our sound? We want to see what the waveform looks like. How can we do this? The good news is you can do this with a Soundcard Oscilloscope for $3. That's right, $3. That's good news. So yes, you can check your sound waveform by using this free software. I'll post a link in the description below. I will also post a link to the USB sound card. But this is free software, and again, I'm gonna emphasize this one more time. This is only for sound. This is not for anything else. That's it. Just for sound only. So keep that in mind. And but I just want to point that out. So now let's talk about the hardware and how I have this set up. Now, like I said before, I have a USB sound card, just a stock sound card. It's not modified in any way at all. You can get these for $3. That's why when I said in the beginning of the video, you can have a sound oscilloscope for $3. It's like $3 or $4 actually on eBay. I'll post a link to that. Now you're probably asking yourself, well, why do I need that? Can I just plug it into my computer sound card? Yes, you can. You can absolutely do that. But here's the thing that you want to keep in mind. And if you're like me, you make mistakes and things happen. And if by some weird chance I accidentally send voltage through this cable, I'd rather wreck a $3 sound card that I can throw away and buy a new one than the sound card in my laptop. So I highly recommend you just spend the $3 and buy the sound card. Okay. Now, how I have this hooked up in this particular video is I have the speaker out on the radio going to the microphone in on the sound card. Okay. I have the volume all the way up. Now, since I'm only using one cable in this particular setup, I do not need the ground isolator block that you saw in my other videos because I'm not using two cables. I'm only using one. Okay? So, that's how I have this hooked up. Obviously, the USB sound card is plugged into the laptop that I'm using to make this video. You just can't see it. I just have a USB extension on that, just to explain that. Okay, now when you install the software, I'm not going to go into great depth with this. This software can do a lot of cool stuff. But I'm going to show you the basics so that you can get started. The first thing you got to do, you got to go to settings. You got to select your sound card, which would be the USB sound card that you're going to use for this. Input means microphone on the USB sound card. Okay. Now in my particular case, it is microphone 7. It will say USB audio device. So yours might say microphone 6, or it might say microphone 5, or whatever the case may be. But just make sure you select the right one for the USB sound card that you're using. Okay. Output in this particular video, we're not going to worry about that, but this particular oscilloscope software does have 2 channels, so you could select an output, which would be the speaker output on the sound card. You could select that and have it play a tone coming out. Yes, this software also has a built-in single generator, which is handy if you want to inject tone, so you're not doing audio into the microphone all the time. But I'm not going to go into detail with that. But it does have a single generator. You can select channel 1 or channel 2, either a sine wave, what frequency, and how loud by the amplitude you want it to be, how loud of a tone. Like I said, we're not going to go into that video, but this can also do that too, which is really cool. So let's go back to the oscilloscope. Now, when you first get this installed, it's going to look like this. First thing you want to do, like I said before, this oscilloscope can do 2 channels. Channel 1 and channel 2. Channel 2 would be in red. The line would be in red, and any writing on the screen would be in red. And channel 2 is going to be green. So the line will be green. Any writing on the screen would be green also. But we're not going to worry about channel 2. We're going to uncheck this. We're going to make this simple and clean to read this, to use this. The next thing you want to do is you want to go down here, measure. It's going to probably say status. We want to change that to hertz and volts. We're going to select that. We're going to select frequency, and we're going to select voltage. As you can see on my screen, it will pop up a frequency and voltage. Those are the main ones we're going to worry about. In this particular video, we're going to worry more about volts peak to peak, but it is kind of cool to have a frequency on here. Let's say if you were injecting a 1 kilohertz tone, you can actually see if your tone is actually 1 kilohertz. But for this particular video, like I said, we're just going to mainly concentrate on volts peak to peak. Over here, you have the amplitude and you have time. Now, the amplitude is going to determine what each box is going to be on the top and on the bottom. When you're dealing with audio, you're going to have a positive wave and a negative wave, sine wave. So when you put this to 1 volt, it's going to mean each box here is 1 volt. This would be 2 volts. This would be 3 volts, etc. Same with down here. 1 volt, 2 volts, 3 volts, etc. Volts peak to peak means when this waveform peaks out, if it goes to 1 box, it's going to be 1 volt here. And if it goes to 1 box on the negative part of the waveform, it's going to be 1 volt. You add those two together, gives you VPP, which stands for volts peak to peak, when you have this set to 1 volt. When you have it set to 100 millivolts, M means millivolts. 100, 10, 1. If I move this to here, that means each box on the positive and each box on the negative is going to be 100 millivolts. U means micro, very small. So that's what U means. So in this particular, I'm going to start with 1 volt. And in my time, I'm going to leave that at 1. We'll be adjusting that, and I will show you that in a minute. Now, I'm going to key up on another radio so I can activate this radio, and you'll see a green light. Hopefully you'll see this in the video. So when I key up the radio, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. You can see the audio. Now, there's way too many cycles. What I mean by that is each little peak you see is a cycle, and we want to zoom in on that. So you adjust the time to zoom in. We're going to adjust this time to try to zoom in. We want to try to get 1 cycle. Now, we may not be able to get exactly 1 cycle with this software, but we're going to try our best. So now I got it to 1 millivolts for the time. We're pretty close. You still might have 2 cycles there, but for this particular video, that's okay. But there's one thing you should be noticing is how when it peaks off, it flatlines. That means it's getting cut off, and that's not good. We're also getting about 2 volts peak to peak, meaning the waveform is hitting 1 square up here and 1 square down here, and that's giving us 2 volts peak to peak. So this would be way too loud on Zello. It's going to be distorted and way too loud. And like I said, because the top of the waveform is flatlining, that means it's cutting off. So I'm going to unkey the radio now. My thumb is getting tired. So that's what that means. So we want to turn this down. So we're going to turn this down. Now, if you notice on my radio, I have a white dot on the knob. That white dot will show you where the volume is at. And I also have it set so that when I hook this right up to Zello, I know where my presetting is. So let's go down to halfway. We're going to go right there, halfway. Now we're going to key up the radio. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now as you can see, I'm barely moving off the line here. We got to readjust this amplitude because it's too high. We got to get to see the waveform. Let's go to 100 millivolts. So each box is 100 millivolts. Actually, it might be a little. We're starting to go off the screen, so I might want to go in between here. So let's go in between here. Okay. So let's go about there. Maybe a little bit more. Right about there. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now you notice how when it peaks, it's rounded. It's not being cut off. That's good. That's what we want. We don't want distortion. See how the peaks are rounded? Now, of course, we're only getting, well, we're getting about 1 volt peak to, oh, yeah, about, I think I saw, up there it is, 1.0 volts peak to peak. That's still pretty loud. So, but the waveform is not distorted per se coming out of the radio. But again, it would probably be way too loud on Zello. So I'm going to unkey the radio here, and I'm going to show you when I had this radio hooked up to Zello, I had someone on a phone telling me, hey, keep adjusting, keep adjusting. Oh, you sound good now, you sound good. When they said that, I marked the radio. Now at the time, I didn't have a really good marker, so it didn't dot very well on here. So I recommend you get like a paint marker or a whiteout. If you want to permanently mark the radio, get a whiteout pen, not a whiteout brush. At the time I had a whiteout brush, and that's why it's kind of gobby here. But that's, it is what it is. Now the other dot here is off actually. So I'm going to turn this top knob so it matches to the spot where they said, oh, you sound good. So we're going to go to here. We're going to go right about there. Okay? Hopefully you can kind of see that. So we got the top dot to match here to the other dot here. It's not much of a dot, but you get the idea. We're going to lay the radio down. Now we're going to key up this radio again. We're going to key up this radio. Radio check. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now as you can see here, we're barely moving off the line, so we got to adjust this amplitude a little bit more here. So we get about 10 millivolts per box. And as you can see here, we're looking really good. The peaks are nice and rounded. They're not flat. And we're getting about, what is that? About, I think I saw 150, 140, 150 millivolts peak to peak. So that's pretty small coming out. That's pretty low volume coming out. But that just kind of, I'm going to unkey the radio here. But that kind of shows you how much lower that volume has to be, at least on my setup. When I had this hooked up, the volume's got to be fairly low to get the distortion out. But it's nice to actually see the waveform. And that's what this software is great for, is you can see the waveform and you can kind of get an idea, oh, is it too high or what? Yes, you can get the idea, obviously, by having someone listening. But there may be times where you can't have someone to listen. Or if you want, you can make a cable. Now, you can take a 3.5 millimeter cable, just one, cut the end off, make a couple probes here, and I could plug this into the microphone part of the USB and have myself a little test probe where I could probe, one's ground, obviously the green's ground, and then the red, I can probe a circuit, a sound circuit, to check my audio, kind of like a little oscilloscope probe, more or less. So a guy could do that too if you were wanting to check it. Now, I did mention about the signal generator, and that's really useful because you can eject a tone into your radio or into your circuit or whatever you're working on, and you can adjust the frequency and how loud it is with the amplitude. You can select channel 1 or channel 2, whichever one. I'm not going to go into depth with that, but this software can produce a tone, so you don't have to sit there and say audio, 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 audio for, all day, however long it takes you to adjust your radio. So there it is. Pretty neat software. Like I said, it's cheap. You just buy a USB sound card, and I hope this video kind of help get you started. Now, I should probably mention too, is if you turn the software off, there's a run and stop. You can also save the waveform, which is kind of cool. Watch, if I turn this on and I take the radio right here and I do radio check 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4, and you notice how as I was talking, I hit stop. Now it saved that waveform at that moment, and now I can save it. So that's kind of cool too, just to kind of point that out. But make sure you have the software running. Obviously, you can kind of tell what the lines are moving when it's on, but that's how you can stop the software. So at any rate, I hope this video is helpful. If you have any questions or comments, please post them down below. Please subscribe. Thank you and have a good day.